This video is sponsored by EA. I obviously received a limited time access to the early access of the brand new expansion, which is Adventure Awaits, which comes out today, which I know in recent news, some of you may be choosing not to pick up this pack, which is absolutely valid. I do feel like with the uncertainty right now, and also just not agreeing with the violations and also the views that are held by the new owners. The sale hasn't gone through yet, but I do understand everyone's thoughts on this, and also are constantly evolving, and we're learning new things, and I think that's really important for us as simmers to keep ourselves educated on these things. But before this news, a lot of you were asking these questions, and I still wanted to make this video. So this is my cross-pack compatibility. I was actually able to do this in early access this time around. I do want to give the disclaimer of this was in early access, and also I was kind of moving files around, so some things were a little rocky here and there. I will get into them, but I definitely think some of these issues, hopefully fingers crossed, have been ironed out before release. But of course, it comes out today, and so I will follow up in a pinned comment if any of the issues that I saw in early access have actually continued into the full release version. I just wanted to let you know that this was all recorded in early access. Of course, one of the most important things that you lot wanted to know is what activities can you do at these getaways and also these custom venues, which, by the way, those two things are basically the same, but they just work differently. So a custom venue, you can have a schedule on, but then you can visit that custom venue. You don't have to pay to visit it if it is just a custom venue, and it just works like a regular lot that your sim can go to, but other sims around them, and I'm fairly sure also your sims, will be directed by that schedule and the autonomy. It just kind of gives you a way to make lots flow better and actually have more micromanagement and control over a venue and a lot that we've been able to build for the longest time if you want that. Whereas if you actually host a getaway on that venue, the schedule from the custom venue will apply to your getaway. I'm fairly sure you can then edit up that getaway schedule if you want to, but just keep in mind you can have a custom venue be solely different from a getaway. You will pay for a getaway, it works like a holiday, and you will tend to have more choice over who is in those roles. You can still do that on a custom venue. If you travel to the custom venue, then you can pick from people who you know, or from the kind of schedule menu, you can choose different sims in different areas, but you actually have to travel there first. Whereas for a getaway, you can just kind of choose it without being on the lot. I hope that makes sense. I know a couple of people were asking about the actual difference between those two things in my gameplay overview, and I kind of went into it, but I feel like I didn't give as much as a roundup, honestly, just because it was also confusing. I was definitely overwhelmed with the early access of this pack. But onto the activities, it's pretty much the same activities that we are used to seeing in business and hobbies. It's the exact same list. Anything that was included in businesses and hobbies is also included in this now schedule feature of getaways and custom venues. Unfortunately, that does mean that horse riding isn't included. It wasn't included in businesses and hobbies. Fairly sure there is a mod that now exists for that, which I will actually probably make a video on my must-have mods for this pack. So you can't technically run a riding school. However, if you do build a stables or a petting zoo, whatever it may be, as long as you have active sims, which you have to have at least one active sim be on a getaway at any given point, you could actually have those active sims in your household who you are controlling riding those horses. But that's kind of a thing that you've always been able to do anyway. Without the scheduling, without businesses and hobbies, you've been able to go to a stables lot and then have your sims get on horses. They can't ride together as a group. That has never been an option. But I just wanted to let you all know, because a lot of you were asking about horse ranch. You just have the same ones that came with businesses and hobbies. So that is like look after the farm animals, where you kind of like care for them, you play with them, you pat them, you feed them, and also the same for horses. And then you also have like a horses play here kind of scheduled event. I'm not going to go through every single one of these activities, but feel free to like pause the video and check it out at your own pace. You can make the video go slower, which I know so many of you are like, girl, you already talk too slow. Which I can't help. Like, this is literally just how I talk, and I'm gonna be so real. I'm not about to switch up my speech pattern. I'm so sorry, but you can always speed up the video if you think I talk too slowly. Can you decorate the house with seasons? You can just choose like decorate together with your getaway sims. So technically you could do that if you have like family members come over for like a getaway over Winterfest. You can just click on the tree and choose to decorate with them. It's not really an activity that the schedule does, but you as a player always have the opportunity to do that. When it comes to occults, when I actually made a magic school, obviously we don't have access to like the gallery, so I couldn't like use anything wild, but a couple of you were asking like a spellcaster like boarding school or this or that, or like anything to do with occults. Again, you have all the same ones from businesses and hobbies, which is like using vampiric powers, drinking plasma. If you have paranormal stuff, you can do like the seance. If you have life and death, you can use tarot. You can use werewolf abilities, fairy abilities for good or bad. All of those different things. I will say I'm fairly sure there is an issue right now in the game. And again, this was in early access. Hopefully this has been ironed out before release, because I do feel like this definitely had an effect on how well these played out. But it felt like if you cancelled out of a getaway early, then it would kind of have a knock-on effect of like your other getaways. And Sims didn't feel super responsive. I'm not 100% sure that was an actual bug, but I did realize in the like magic occult like getaway that we had, the Sims really weren't focusing too much. They were using their werewolf abilities. I would say the werewolves were predominantly sleeping, so they were just like curled up and sleeping on the ground, but Sims were just kind of like doing what you expect Sims to do, like using the PC and like sat on chairs rather than using their abilities. And also it has the same drawbacks for those of you who like want to make a school, for example, that businesses and hobbies had, where you can hold lectures, but because you can't actually host a getaway or have a custom venue, be in a business like retail that we got introduced with businesses and hobbies, it means you can't actually run like paid classes, because paid classes are only available on a business lot that you actually own, and you can't have getaways on a business lot. You also can't have getaways on a residential rental or a vacation rental. So those three are all kind of their own separate lot type still, and those do not like integrate with one another. However, I think it was kind of weird in the sense that like in businesses and hobbies, the employees have like a slightly different list because they can like host classes or lectures, whereas I'm like 99% sure, even if you were like the camp director, for example, like the head, and you were like an employee under the camp, I don't think there was the option to host lectures. So really the only person or the only people that could potentially host lectures were if you were an active sim who was like an employee. So if you were the camp director or something of that nature. And that felt a little bit weird to me, that they didn't have like their own version of that you could choose. I did decide to test out a cheerleading club. Again, kind of had a couple of like quirks with it, for the fact that only one person can use the cheerleading mat at one time, which I probably should have just got like 4 different small cheering mats instead of just like the one. We could actually do a cheer together, and then people were just kind of like working out on the yoga mats. I decided to actually host this at Thrifty up in that like top room. You can have these be recurring if you want to. You could have it happen like 2 to 3 days after school, and that would happen like every week. I guess there is cross compatibility if you use your imagination when it comes to high school years, but you can also host a getaway on the high school years lot. Hosted this actually in the hours of school, and the teachers did actually come and like tell my sim off for like missing school, and I found it really shocking that you could host a getaway on the school. I genuinely was shocked by that. I guess this does also mean that after school you could host a getaway on that lot, and then you could of course host the chess club, maybe a fitness club if you wanted to, cheerleading, etc., which I think is probably why they opened that up. I really hope that that wasn't like a bug or like a missed thing, that they were like, oh, maybe we shouldn't actually allow them to throw it on the high school years lot. I really wasn't expecting it, but you can, and I hope that that actually carries on through to the released version, because I actually do think that is fun for high school year clubs. I did also set up skiing. This is where I found out that you couldn't actually host a getaway on a vacation rental. You could obviously do it on like a regular residential if you wanted to. I actually set up a custom venue, and the Sims will actually like take themselves off and they will ski, they will snowboard. You again can't really like teach them unless you like host a lecture on just like fitness, I guess. They will also just like line up to ski or snowboard or sledge. Like I said, you can't mesh together for rent, businesses and hobbies, and getaways or custom venues. They are all still their own separate systems, so you can't host a getaway on a, I forgot what they're called in businesses and hobbies, but even if you like live there and you also run a business on there, you can't host a getaway. However, you can actually build custom venues and also host getaways in the vacation worlds. That consists of Selva Dorada and Granite Falls. Both of those you can do whatever you want. So I know a lot of you were asking like, can you technically run scouts and have them go to Granite Falls and like actually have it be like the scouts and active? Yes, you absolutely can. I'm fairly sure you won't be able to host it in Batu. I didn't even try, but Batu is like its own separate thing that you can't even really build on anyway, aside from like using cheats. And I'm fairly sure that is the same for like the hidden lot in Life and Death, and also like the peak of Mount Komorebi. I'm like 99% sure you won't be able to host getaways there. I didn't test it because honestly, one, I don't really have an interest in like interacting with those areas of the game, and also two, I'm fairly sure you need cheats to get there anyway, and I don't know those cheats off the top of my head. However, hosting scouts in the outdoor retreat world of Granite Falls actually worked really, really well. One thing to note on this is if you actually want them to wear the scout uniform, you have to have an active sim in your household actively join the scouts. That is the only way that you actually unlock the outfit in Create a Sim. And then once they have joined the scouts, I actually had my sim go put it on like the little scout board that you can place down in your home. Then once they had it on, obviously it then appeared in my Create a Sim. And whilst I was actually planning either a getaway or a custom venue, you can actually assign outfits to specific roles. I changed that outfit to the little scout fit that we got in Seasons. It was available, although it isn't tagged by Seasons, which was throwing me off. It is just tagged as base game. I think probably because it's like an unlockable, so try not to filter by Seasons or else you won't find it, but you will find it if you just go into full body outfits. Obviously, you could do that for kids and teenagers. Also, in Granite Falls, when it comes to the entomology skill, it is only a level 5 skill. However, catching bugs in Outdoor Retreat does also get up your entomology skill, and any of the flying bugs that are around, so that includes like the butterflies, the dragonflies, you can actually use a net to catch those now. It always was that your sims would just kind of catch them in their hands. That still happens for the ones that reside on the floor, like the ladybirds and stick insects, etc. However, the flying ones you can also catch in a net if you have Adventure Awaits. The eco lifestyle bugs that you can grow also get up your entomology skill. You don't interact with them any differently, but if you do interact with them, you will gain a slight raise to your entomology. The only thing that I did notice when it came to scouts, because people were like, can you earn scout badges? Obviously, you can earn scout badges. You can earn scout badges pretty much just like living your Sim's life. However, the paper crafting doesn't count towards the crafting badge, which is a little unfortunate considering it's literally called like paper crafting, and I was kind of hoping that that would be the case because I had a lot of those like around. Maybe if you do want them to actually earn those badges, have more of the activity tables. I just think that that was just like a little forgotten about feature. That's not to say maybe that won't be updated in the future, especially if people like do decide that that is something that they want to see. I definitely just think it was a thing that they didn't even really like acknowledge or like think about in the design process, but could be quite easy to actually sort that. I guess whilst we're on the topic of like kids at camp and like what they can and can't do and what links up with other stuff, someone asked if you could get your character values up whilst at a getaway, and again this just kind of works like the scout badges, like it's just encouraged by behaviors that your Sims does. So if your Sim is like washing up dishes, that is going to help with like their responsibility. I'm fairly sure if they're on a getaway, their responsibility won't go down even if it is during a school day, because it's kind of counted as a holiday, and I don't think that affects the responsibility. But yeah, your character values just move up and down as normal, like they're not paused on a getaway. So anything that was getting those up or down originally will still continue to do it on a getaway. Also, a lot of you asked about formative moments, and now these are just kind of like brought on by your Sims doing things. Obviously, if you do travel to Granite Falls and you're like out and about and you're doing like fishing or you're like catching bugs, like that can definitely encourage like get out there and explore. Or if you're on a getaway, it's like become an independent Sim. These don't really have cross-pack compatibility in like, you know, there are specific formative moments made for specific packs. There's not ones made for like occult children where it's like, I want to grow wings as a fairy and stuff like that. They haven't thought about cross-pack compatibility in that way, but I imagine some of the interactions that you do when it comes to like other things that were introduced in packs probably will encourage your Sim to get into a formative moment. They just don't have like pack specific ones. But of course, I couldn't really like go into detail and like test all of that, considering like formative moments are kind of expansive in like the things that can kickstart them. They're just kind of things that you will notice happening in the background of your game, but there isn't one for like specifically riding horses and things like that. Kind of on the same train of like getting Sims to decorate with you, you can actually start clubs at getaways. So you can do this in the base game version, you know, where you like create a group, then you like choose where that group will go or like play together, etc., stuff like that. So you can create just like the base game groups on getaways and at custom venues. Works exactly the same as it always has, and you can actually start group gatherings from get together. That is one thing that I forgot to do. I forgot to show like the activities that were included in like the get together clubs, but I do know from like briefly looking at it, I just didn't record it. Diving is included. I'm fairly sure kayaking was included. So a lot of the activities that you can obviously do that were introduced in Adventure Awaits are included in like the things that you can do as club activities. Again, massive crossover between that businesses and hobbies and the new scheduling features of Adventure Awaits. They all kind of pluck from the same activity system. But the clubs is actually really, really nice. I think that just kind of allows you to play these a little bit more individually. I think that you can tell stories using clubs in a getaway. Like maybe everyone who is part of that getaway, I mean, even if you do decide to do like cheerleading, etc., could just be the Sims that you have in like a cheerleading group anyway. Or you could choose to have like your closest friends in there. You could choose to have your family. It just offers a little bit more micromanagement again for those getaways. Maybe you don't want to like interact with everyone who's on a getaway, but you want to interact with specific people. You can just add them to a group. You can start that group. And also, interesting fact, if you do add people to the group that aren't on the getaway, they also will spawn. I had Sophia in my group, but she wasn't actually part of the getaway. And once I started the group gathering, she also appeared on the lot. and like we could interact with her, and clubs just work the same way as usual. You like get club points for doing activities that you encourage them to do. I didn't really play around too much with like differing the actions that they do in the group and then differing the actions that they do in the getaway. I had those be very, very similar, so it would be interesting to see which autonomy kind of wins. Would it be the custom venue and getaway autonomy, or would it more so be the get together club system autonomy? But like I said, mine had a lot of crossover, like basically just encouraging people to practice cheerleading. However, another little note on that, you can't actually host a group in a vacation world, and I think that's because they like kind of forbid groups in vacation worlds. So even though you can host a getaway, you can't really have the club system kind of backing it up in those vacation worlds. Is there weather in this new pack? Yes, there is. They actually even called it out on the main menu, like the information of the world. It snows. There will be snow in winter. I didn't go into too much depth. I didn't really check out like the foliage and the trees. I know some people and some worlds currently right now, I don't think like the trees go brown, look as if they are in winter. I didn't actually check that out too deeply, but I do know that it snows in this new world. There are also a couple of new things added to the bucket list, weirdly non-listed under adventure, which is quite ironic considering this is adventure awaits. But you can woohoo in the electric lagoon, which is part of the new world in Gibby Point. You can fill a butterfly habitat, and then you can also reach level 5 in the archery, and you can also reach level 5 in diving, and then you also have to win an archery competition for that. I wouldn't say these are anything too interesting, just kind of like, hey, I want to like max this skill and do something to do with this skill. When it comes to fame, you don't actually get fame from like being on a getaway, so even Love Island, which I know is kind of like influenced by Love Island, I think a couple of people were expecting this to be like a televised thing and therefore your fame would go up, but that is not the case. Even if you like complete Love Island, your fame will just stay the same. Obviously, interactions that you do on getaways can affect your like fame and also reputation more predominantly. I feel like reputation is always easier to get up or down rather than fame. So that's not to say that it's like completely unachievable, but like winning Love Island, for example, isn't gonna get you anywhere. And then there were also a couple of questions about fitness. So when it comes to spin classes, a couple of you were wondering if you could like use the spin bikes. I'm assuming you wanted to know if you could do this like spa day with like being a yoga instructor and like hosting a class. No, you can't. I placed these down in a base game gym, and I obviously had my sim go over there. You can't like host a spin class. When you are on a getaway, then you can actually choose like an instructor and like start a spin class, but I was also having issues with that. My sim would just kind of like stop cycling, and then I feel like their fitness wouldn't really go up. I don't think classes run the best in this game anyway. There's also a like weightlifting class that you can do on getaways, but I'm fairly sure that wasn't an option when I put it in a base game gym. All my sim could do at the gym was ask for fitness mentoring on the spin bike. The diving platform in Get Together does get up your diving skill, so I think it's the same interactions as usual. I don't think the new dives have actually been ported over to that diving platform. However, any dive or jump that you do off that platform does actually get up your diving skill now. Obviously, diving skill was introduced with this new pack. And also, yes, kayaks are usable in like all of the swimming waters that you are used to. The same way that the boats work, anything that the island living boats work in, the kayak will also work. So really anything like deep enough that is swimmable, you can also kayak there. You can also fish off the kayaks. It just works the exact same way as the island living canoes that we have. And there we have it. I hope this video was helpful. I hope it offered some answers to some of the cross-pack compatibility, some of the limitations that might exist. I know a lot of you are going to be disappointed by the horses again. Genuinely, it's why I don't particularly like Horse Ranch. I think that out of a lot of the packs in The Sims 4, that one feels like the most like rushed for me, like the least polished, and there's just something about it that does not sit right. There are still things that are confusing me about this pack. I think because I didn't really play too deeply like the spin classes, I don't really understand like when and where they can and can't work, because like they worked on the pier, but that is a like program thing in Adventure Awaits, and then they also worked on getaways, but I guess that is all part of the pack, so of course they were like making it work there. I also think the like distinction between like the employee stuff and then the customer stuff that was in businesses and hobbies maybe should have been brought over to this a little bit better, but I honestly just need to spend some more time and like actually play with different variants with all of these when it comes to getaways and custom venues. I think I struggled in early access because one, I couldn't download stuff from the gallery, and like I don't have enough time to sit and build like these things to then test these out in like depth, whereas I could just take it from the gallery and like turn it into a getaway, and I think that's going to make my life easier, which also in turn it's like hard to think about like missed opportunities when it comes to cross-pack compatibility. I think the high school years stuff was really surprising to me. I think being able to host a getaway on the high school is actually going to open up maybe high school years a little bit more. However, you really still can't get like an active like school going, I feel like, but who knows? Someone might correct me on that, and someone might do a much better job at kind of like exploring. I'm sure I'm gonna have a fair few videos up like going over different kind of ideas and things that you can come up and like testing things. I know that you lot appreciated my businesses and hobbies version of that, and considering this pack is very, very similar, I think I'm gonna wait a little bit to maybe kind of give like my like deep thoughts and like overview and like should this be an expansion pack, because I feel like I need to play with it with other packs installed for right now, just that little bit longer, so I can like form my actual feelings and opinions on it. But thank you all so much for tuning in, and I will speak to you all in my next one. Bye now.